Lucas Vebber from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is standing by to talk about data centers. Now, Lucas, I confess I didn't know Will was involved in anything going on with data centers. I'm pleased that at least with regard to property rights and transparency, we have got you folks on our team on this, because it does really seem like these things are being steamrolled into our state. But thanks for being on the show. It's good to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
One of the things that isn't being discussed at all is the impact of that people are going to experience in the community. I mean, some people are saying, well, the water prices are going to go up and the electricity prices are going to go up. Yes. Okay. So that is what is being discussed. I watched a report of a woman who had a data center near Chicago. She was 1,000 feet away from that data center. And the noise of the generators at that data center were loud enough you could easily record it on your phone. And it was at decibels that are not considered tolerable for a lot of people. So, yeah, how is this happening without anybody being consulted? And then I think of Port Washington.
Port Washington, which are going.
Yeah.
Adam. These are getting built up everywhere.
Everywhere. And now we're learning that the fix is in. Now we're learning you're not talking to people. You're having folks sign NDAs, town board members, municipal leaders, the landowners who are going to sell their property, cash out big. They're signing NDAs. Nobody's allowed to talk about these things. And by the time the community rallies and says, hey, we want a seat at the table here, it's too late. The deal's done.
Yeah, and we're seeing a large fight happening right now up in Ozaukee County with the proposed data center in Port Washington. Even though that data center is already being built on the ground, the fight that's going on right now relates to the electrification of it, so running high voltage power lines to it. Obviously, anytime you have a facility of that size and that it's going to use almost like, I think, a quarter of the state's power supply will be going towards the data center. You need to run high voltage power lines to it. The fight now is at the Public Service Commission, whether or not they're going to take people's land from them against their wishes. They don't want to sell their land. Whether they're going to use the power of the state to take their land and put these high voltage power lines for the benefit of the data center, which is, of course, owned by a private company. I mean, this is not what eminent domain power is for, and it's I think something that a lot of people don't really think of when they're thinking of all these data centers going up.
Oh no, I don't think people are understanding. Especially people who aren't going to be affected by it. If it's not anywhere near you, it's not your problem. But it likely will be your problem. I watched that report on Good Morning America, and I don't normally say anything good about reports on Good Morning America, but this was excellent. 1/2 of all new demand for energy in the United States is going to be data centers. You say in Wisconsin, one single data center is going to demand 1/4 of all power capacity in Wisconsin. And that that affects everybody. So please, people, don't think this isn't your problem, because it will be our problem. And as for the noise, no one's talking about the noise. No one's just, saying, hey, can we get some information on what the quality of life is going to be? Then you mention eminent domain. I thought we had a piece of legislation. This was back back when Scott Walker was governor, that protected people's properties being seized for eminent domain for a private company's profit.
Exactly. And unfortunately that is exactly what's going on here. And could be if the route that they select is the route that goes through these people's land. It's going to be really a terrible and an unfortunate situation. But as you said, there's a lot of effects of these data centers that go everywhere. I think Wisconsin generally, like pretty much every other state, was caught kind of flat-footed and ill-prepared to deal with the broad ramifications of building these. I mean, they're going to get built, right? It's kind of the future. They're getting built everywhere. We need to make sure we do it in a way that's responsible, that respects private property rights, that doesn't drive up our utility rates, and kind of is forward-looking rather than just what's hot right now.
Yeah, well, yes, and they're targeting all of these rural communities or these bedroom communities. You're not. I saw that the Madison, I believe it was Madison City Council, voted and said that we're not going to approve any new data centers. Well, they're not going into Madison. They're into Forest. Yeah. They're on the outskirts of Janesville. They're Port Washington. They're not in cities proper that was nothing more than virtue signaling from my perspective from the city of Madison Common Council, or I call them the Central Committee. Oh, we laid down a marker. Well, you're not targeted anyway, so it's not your problem. You'll benefit from it. You won't have to shoulder the burden of it, but DeForest will. Port Washington, wherever else they're going up. I know that there's DeForest, Port Washington, outside of Janesville, and there's probably more because we are among the number one targets to cite in these things. And the same process is happening. Company comes in, talks to town officials. Here's all the property tax revenue you're going to get. Here's all the the stuff you're going to get so you can raise government spending. Sign this NDA. Okay, project's going forward, and now we're up against a Public Service Commission, which has zero accountability. See, that's the problem, Lucas. The Public Service Commission is appointed by the governor, and it answers to no one except the governor. And this governor is on his way out the door.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of unclear what this process is going to play out. But unfortunately, the Public Service Commission has over the years been really more of a rubber stamp for any kind of utility project that comes out. So we're hoping we get a fair look at this one, and again, that whatever decision comes out respects those private property rights, because, obviously, when it comes to eminent domain, you have projects that need it, right? I mean, there are projects, if we need to build a road or a prison or a school, you need the land. Everybody understands that's the last resort. That's what eminent domain exists for. Eminent domain doesn't exist so that a power company can take your land to fund a data center to benefit another company. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not what it was put in place for, and it's never what it should be used for.
No,
so.
And we have no oversight. That's the thing. There's no broad oversight. There's no task force in Wisconsin. There's nobody looking at the old law. The old law, and I apologize, I forget who crafted the old law, was a good conservative guy. He was a big gun rights guy. The old law was in response to the Kelo decision from the United States Supreme Court, which said, I guess it's okay for public purpose rather than public use. And there was a distinction between those two words. And public purpose can be defined all kinds of different ways. Well, you might have an app that benefits from the data center, and it benefits from AI, but it isn't public use. And we're not the ones accruing the benefits at all. Back to Port Washington. This thing is 500 football fields. Lucas, that is, yeah. I can't even, I think I'd have to pull up a drone to get a sense of what 500 football fields look like. I think it's over 600 acres.
Yeah, I think, any person who thinks they have an idea of how big one of these is would still be shocked if they saw it in Burgess, how the sheer expanse. And this is just the first phase, of the data centers being built now, but at full build out, it's going to be absolutely humongous. That's why it uses so much power. That's why it's going to have impacts on just more than just the Port Washington community. I mean, our client in this case lives in the town of Saukville, just west of there, a county, and it's going to be just have impacts across southeast Wisconsin that are felt for years to come. And that's why it's so important to get this right at the front end and not just rush in anything in a way that is not forward thinking.
Yeah, we're talking about high voltage lines as well. You mentioned the high voltage lines. And as I'm listening to this video report, in other areas, high voltage lines were predicted to be as tall as wind turbines. I don't even know how you can do that. That's land. You need land to erect a structure that can maintain a line that is that high off the ground. That's nuts. And so it's exactly. Not even everyone. This stuff is going to it is going to be, just flotsam across Wisconsin. And you think that it's not near you, but the high voltage line probably needs to be.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing that everybody needs to understand is that today the fight is happening there. Tomorrow it's going to be in your backyard. So yep. It's important to pay attention and to know what's going on and not just to wish it away as somebody else's problem right now. Because one, this is going to impact us all, potentially in our utility rates. And two, it's going to be coming to your backyard next. So everybody needs to be aware and alert.
What happens if OpenAI goes face down? They are having trouble getting funding right now. They are not Bill Gates. They can't just cut the check themselves. They're having, this was just early last week, where they're having difficulty securing the dollars that are necessary to maintain these data centers. What if OpenAI can't hack it? What if they can't, what if they can't float the project any longer? Where does that leave Wisconsin? Is there any indication of reclamation, remediation, or how, the state of Wisconsin isn't going to suddenly be saddled with the burden of maintaining these things on their own?
Yeah, and I think that highlights one of the major problems with the utility proceeding now. We're always told, oh, no, this isn't going to raise anybody's rates. They're going to pay
But
the
it
full
is.
cost of this. But it is. And then what happens is they're not there to pay. Who's on the hook for these lines if they're not buying all the power they say they're going to buy? Or,
Correct.
there's
That's
very
the
real
thing.
concerns here. And
Yeah, I mean, OpenAI is everyone should look up OpenAI. Go look up what I just told you. That last week it was announced they did not know if they were even going to be able to secure the funding. In Chicago, one of the women who was interviewed said her utility bill went up instantly 27%. And the utility itself told her expect rate increases because of the data center. We are going to see rate increases, period. That is going to happen, period. I mean, I don't even know how you can avoid it, especially at the startup, level of this. And it will
Exactly.
because they'll say it's not fair if it's just We Energies. The people who are experiencing the We Energies increases, that's not fair. They can't afford the utility bills. You will end up seeing that spread across Wisconsin.
Absolutely. And it's not like we're starting from a place of low utility bills. We have the second highest rates in the Midwest. We're already paying more than our neighboring states. And this is only going to increase that burden over time. And so, again, everybody needs to pay attention, needs to talk to public officials and let them know how they feel about this.
Well, yeah, and we've had late in the session. There was a NDA bill very late in the session. There was a data center bill that would have required a guarantee of the coverage of the power by the company itself. I don't know how that bill was structured. People were telling me it was sort of just a not an unserious piece of legislation that actually wouldn't have required the data centers to do that. But we don't have a task force. We're not even seeing, big headlines about it in our news media. It's like everybody's asleep at the switch. And the moment someone, pitches a fit like they're doing in Port Washington, the lobbyists are sending people into social media to attack anyone who criticizes the data center proposal. I've seen it myself on my own social media. The lobbyists themselves have minions standing by to attack people who are complaining about it on social media. It's stunning.
Yeah, and it's just a fight that's happening everywhere, and unfortunately, it's going to be right here in Wisconsin over the next 6 to 9 months as this plays out at our state regulator to see if this project can move forward. So,
Lucas, can people, if they're worried about this and they are potentially impacted directly by this, whether it's eminent domain or other things that are in the immediate future for them, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can do that on our website at will-law.org. And there's a form on there they can fill out and get right in touch with our legal team.
will-law.org. That's simple. Just go there. We're just paying attention to Port Washington. There's other projects that are being cited into Wisconsin right now. I do appreciate the time on the program. Thank you very much, Lucas.
Thanks for having me on, Vicki.